Why? Because God is with you. He will never leave you. He'll never forsake you. He is with you to the very end. But word says, even if you are faithless, he is still faithful, for he cannot deny himself. He can't change who he is. He is faithful. What does faithful mean? He's loyal to the end. He sticks closer than a brother, and he is on your side. God is a good God looking to produce good things in your life so that you can represent him all the better. How could we represent a good God with bad things happening in our life all the time? When all we talk about is bad and this is going wrong, is that glorifying a good God? No, it's glorifying a bad devil. We don't want to do that. That's not going to lead to an amazing morning, amazing life, people getting saved, us accomplishing God's best will when we're focused on the wrong things. No, instead, we have to focus on what he says is important and who he is working through us all the time. So what does that have to do with today? Well, if he is a good God trying to lead us into his good things and into his good pleasure, into his good purposes and plans for our lives, we got to get good at listening. Jesus says in John chapter 10, let me read it for you, verses 27 and 28. This is Jesus talking. He says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." Notice, if Jesus says we can hear his voice, then guess what? We can hear his voice. Makes me think of the preschool song, "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so." There's a whole lot more in the word other than Jesus loves me that we should be equally as confident. If the word says it, that's the truth. And so whether your head argues with you, whether your own doubts and the enemy wants to place opposite thoughts on the inside of you, this verse, Jesus talking, who does not lie, is not talking about animals. He's talking about you. He calls himself the good shepherd, watching over his sheep. You and I are the sheep in this analogy. And he says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them." A big thing for every Christian needs to be developing that ability to hear. Notice, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them." I know them comes secondary to hearing his voice. It almost implies there that if you are not readily listening for his voice, hearing what he's saying, then you don't really know him. How do you know someone that you never talk to, you never listen to? It's way more serious than we think. This is a huge part of real Christianity. Otherwise, we're just like the Pharisees in the Old Testament, trying to accomplish religion without any relationship, without hearing his voice, without knowing him. But we can know him, friends. We have been ushered into a new covenant through Jesus' blood, that we can be one with him and know him. But notice the verse doesn't stop there. "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." Hearing is just the first step. It's following him where our faith is actually put into motion. Faith is so much more than just believing. Faith is putting action to what you believe. That's what real faith is. It's not a belief thing. It's an action thing. It's a verb. It's doing the things that you believe. Believing them so much that they cause you to take action. It makes me think of, I was with my good friend from Jubilee Gang. If you haven't ever had Jubilee Gang into your church yet, you got to check them out. Jubilee Gang is amazing. So I was talking with Jerry Moyer, and I was in one of his services, and he pointed this out, and I'd never noticed it before, How fun is it? We've all heard the example, the parable that Jesus tells about the wise and foolish builder, right? The wise man built his house on the rock, and then the foolish man built his house on the sand. But look at what the verse actually says. Therefore, everyone who hears these words, this is Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. What is it? What is building your house on the rock? It's hearing God's words and putting them into practice. That's building your house on the rock. Hearing and putting them into practice. If we don't put them into practice and we still hear, guess what we are? Verse 26. But everyone who hears these words of mine, notice hearing is still the same. They still heard and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. All of us want to think because we're Christians, we're those that are on the rock, but that's not what he's saying at all. He's saying if we hear and don't do it, we don't obey, we put it off, we do it our own way to whatever, then we are those building our house on the sand. And what does it say? The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. I don't want that to be for your life. So what do we need to do? Hear and obey. Listen to his voice and do what he says, how he says, when he says. There's no really other option. If you want to call yourself a Christ follower, you have to follow Christ. You have to do things as he says. So, what do we do today? Set your mind, set your heart on hearing God's voice, on connecting to him. Not on hearing voices with our ears, but with our hearts. A way that my wife loves to teach people how to do this is she says, just ask him, God, do you love me? And right away, that peace, that contentment that happens on the inside, that good, warm, cozy feeling that you have, that's God answering. That's him giving you his reply so that you can hear his voice, so that you can know what he's saying, so that you can hear and obey. So now, let's do it. Let's not just stop at understanding that we should hear God's voice. Let's set our mind to do it. Let's set our heart to do it. Let's set our heart to, when we open our word, not just read it, but hear God speaking to us. Let's put our heart into it, to all day long remind ourselves, hey, what's God saying in this situation? What's God want to say through this conversation? What's God want to say while I'm here at work or at school, while driving in the car, while shuttling kids back and forth, well, whatever, making dinner? What God do you want to say? And he will lead you. He will guide you. He will show you his best plans. And then it's simple. We just have to listen and obey. And that's going to lead to an amazing morning. I can't wait. As you hear God's voice, message us. We want to hear about that. We want to confirm what God said to you and celebrate that you're hearing his voice. As you obey and see God's supernatural results to the actions that he's asked you to do, message us. We want to celebrate that too. All right, y'all. I got to let you go. Have an amazing morning. And for those of you that can join me tonight for prayer. We're going to have a good time learning about prayer and praying together. All right, y'all. Have an amazing morning.